can't help if I don't see them. So the responsibility is with the Alabama Counseling Association, who submits the nominees. I'm trying to help facilitate the process.
So what do you do for the Alabama Counseling Association?
I'm the executive director, but I'm of the board, not the association.
Okay.
There's two different entities.
You're the executive director of the board.
And the Alabama Counseling Association is the one that submits nominations to the governor, not the board.
And you don't have any input with the Alabama Counseling Association to say, hey, I'm the executive director of the board, and when we fill these vacancies, we need to make sure we have geographic diversity as is required by statute. You don't do that?
I have now put it in writing to even further get my point across in the last 2 years that I've been involved. Yes.
When you come in Thursday, would you bring those that you have in writing so we can see the dates on those, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Warren, I want to thank you for clarifying. I understand we changed the procurement process, and you explained what the problem's been, and I want to thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
When you brought it up, I remembered there has been a change in the procurement process over the last 2 years or so, so thank you.
I've been in a bad situation of knowing it's for a year, and, here I am, part of that process, but I'm not the approver of any of that. So it's been a bad situation, and myself as a business person, I'm glad the procedures are in place for us to get these bids taken care of.
All right, stay close. Representative Underwood, did you have a question?
Thank you. So I've read on here on your report, which thank you for this. It's been, I was up late last night because I was just enjoying going through some of the work you've done. And I know that sounds, twisted, but yeah, I know that's just, it's by nature.
It's okay, we understand each other.
Yes, ma'am. So I would be curious to see, I know we're talking about contracts and emergency contracts. I would like to see the contract. I've never seen it. I don't know what's involved in who does what and what the responsibilities are. Is there any way I could see one of those, maybe the current contract that you're under?
The current contract I'm under is basically a letter, and it just spells out that I do all of the administrative management, blah, blah, blah. Under the new process, there will be an actual contract that is presented to procurement once the bids are finalized and submitted and vetted and approved. And then the contract is developed between the procurement officer, the board's legal counsel, and then it goes to contract review. So we are not there yet, but absolutely. Once that document is prepared, I will be glad to share it with all of the Sunset Committee members. Absolutely.
That sounds good, because I'm sure that would be more detailed. And
yes, sir, it will be. Very detailed.
Yeah. At the moment, though, there is really no detail. It just says you will be the administrator, and that's pretty much it.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Because I noticed in the report it talked about management, administrative services, facilities, and equipment and logistics. And I didn't know any idea about what kind of hours are devoted, what kind of maybe multiples, like not just you, but maybe people within your employment.
Right, yes, sir.
I didn't know what all you're allocating to this particular board.
Correct.
And how to value, that kind of service.
And that will be outlined this time.
Yeah.
How many employees are dedicated to that board. And it's split up between administrative, executive, facilities, equipment.
Okay, so I think I still like to see the letter,
Sure,
just so I can
absolutely.
have it.
Yes, sir.
And I guess what that leads me to is, I just have two more, I'm sorry. This is a whole lot of background work for me.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
I'm not sure how you arrived at the amount that you're charging based on the vagueness of the letter, which is why I'm trying to back into what you provided, by means of whatever, employees, hours, hours matter to me too.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
So I'm curious about how much time maybe that you might have done throughout the most current year, I guess would be good. And also, and this is also historical, because I see numbers rising like on revenues. I don't know if that means more licensees or if the rates went up per licensee. I'd like to know if during the last maybe 4 years, if the rates per licensee were increased to cover whatever cost or anything else.
There has not been a fee increase for your licenses.
Okay, so when we see numbers go up, that just means there's more people getting in the industry and more people. That's good. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm looking for. And that's background for me, so I can kind of evaluate, what what those services are. And I appreciate you for doing that.
Yes, sir,
for me.
absolutely. And I'll have an overview of what we've gone through when the office was located in Birmingham and moving it to Montgomery. And Ms. Thomas and I had a conversation about that
Okay.
too, about the increase in revenue. So I'll have information to share, and I'll be glad to email that out prior to
Yeah.
the meeting on Thursday.
That'd be great. Will
Absolutely.
that come
Thank
to you and then to us, or I'm not sure how it gets to me.
I'll send it to
Chairman Barfoot, and then they will distribute it.
How you doing, Chairman? Good to see you. Yes, sir. Doing well. Thank you for the time.
Yes, sir. Ms. Riddle, did you have something to add?
I just wanted to explain that not with just this one, but this is going to be a recurring issue that you're seeing with the administrative type services contracts. Historically, just so you'll know, and why it is incredibly confusing, historically, purchasing has said that that was a non-professional service, and they allowed that just to go through a normal invitation to bid. Our department and legislative members a couple of years ago really got on them and said, if someone is serving as an executive director, that is a professional service. And so we have worked for the past couple of years with finance, and now that has actually been codified in Senate Bill 100. I think it was Senator Orr's bill that says these types of contracts are in fact professional services. When you do that, that follows an entirely different procurement
Right.
process.
Right.
And so that's why there's a lot of confusion, and we've really been trying to work with the Department of Finance because they're the ones in control of all of that. I will say, any of these documents you ever want, we have our working papers and we can share with you. So please always feel free to reach out to Dixie on that. But historically, I wanted you to know this is going to come up with a lot of boards throughout this sunset process this summer.
Thank you. Representative Shedd?
Thank you. Mr. Warren, does this board have any, are there any state agencies or state departments that this board has interaction with, or the state agency or department that is kind of over them in any way? Or do they have?
It is an independent licensing board created by you, the legislature, and then they are overseen by the legislature and the Sunset Committee.
So don't have any connection with other state agencies such as mental health or anything like that?
No, sir. We work with mental health and we provide data to mental health, but they're not an overseeing. There are, now while we're on the topic, I mean, there are several mental health, and you visited one earlier, you know, so there's some options and availability to merge some of those together. Now, they'll tell you they're all distinctly different and all trained differently, but there are a lot of overlapping, and especially with this one in the Marriage and Family Therapy Board, you know, there's some overlapping there. So there's some availability to merge some of these. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Underwood, you're recognized.
I know it's back and forth. I apologize.
Like I said, some of us are very new to this board, so there is ask all the questions you want, in my opinion.
All right. Yeah. Amen. All right. Like Gordon said, we'll go through this together, won't we? Page 16 of this report, I noticed there was a reserve for year-end obligations. They're typically in the 20s, 30s, and 50s. Year-end of 21, 22 was 145. Do we know sort of what pushed that up so high?
I'm sorry, I don't know that right off, but I'll find out.
Okay.
I'll find out and let you know.
Does your firm also do the accounting functions? Okay. So you
For which fiscal year? And I'll make a note.
2022.
2022? Okay.
Yeah, the year-end obligations, which is the accruals, basically.
Yes, sir.
Was 145, 414, and that's significantly higher than the prior years. And I just was curious what we accrued
Right.
at year-end.
Yes, sir. I'll get that.
All right.
Senator Patrick?
We were just looking at the contract, or talking about the contract, and just looking at the significant findings. And Ms. Thomas, I think I'm correct in saying the significant findings, you know, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 approximately significant findings in this process, right? The fees that, some of this is things you can, control, some of it you can't, as you were talking about, I understand. But for the contract amount that Smith and Warren Associates are getting paid, we expect there not to be any significant.
Correct,
findings.
yes, sir.
And I think we've been through this before, obviously. You've always been helpful. Anytime I've asked for something, you've given it to me immediately. I'm just letting you know, I'm just watching it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Appreciate it.
The full story there is when I was hired to manage the board also hired an
Through also with our legal compliance examination of this board, we requested that money be paid back. This individual did not come to our hearing, and the issue has been forwarded over to the Attorney General's office, as is our normal process. So, significant issue number 3. Only 2 of the 7 board members responded to our request to complete a survey on matters pertaining to the board. All 7 members were mailed a letter from our office requesting participation in an online survey, and the letter explained the purpose of the survey and directions on how to complete it. We made this a significant issue because we think this is the board's time to say what they think is going on with their board, and it's their opportunity to let you guys know what they need and if they need something and what's affected them, and only 2 participated. The 4th significant issue has to deal with the board's approval of a contract for legal services not being documented in the board's minutes prior to the execution of the contract. The board entered into a contract for legal services effective March 1st, 2021 through February 28th, 2023. The contract was executed and the person was performing the services, and the board's documentation of approving the contract was not documented in the minutes. The prior significant issues that are currently unresolved, we've talked about. 1, the geographical issues with 2 members currently serving from congressional districts 3 and 6 when there are no representatives from districts 2 or 4.
Yes, ma'am. So this is dealing with the minutes of the previous significant issue.
Yes, sir.
So this is dealing with the minutes, and Mr. Ward's company, is part of their responsibility in this is to review and comply, make sure the minutes comply at this time when this significant situation was found.
As of 2021, let me not tell you incorrect.
Or who was responsible party, because I understand the director has changed as well.
Yes, so Mr. Warren's company was contracted to provide administrative management facility services at that time, but there was an executive director on staff at that time too that was.
So who was responsible to make sure that the minutes were accurate during that time?
I do not know if it would be the executive director or Mr. Warren's company, but I will find out.
Okay, thank you.
They list their legal counsel as being Hindi Cootie, so I sometimes hold attorneys responsible for those matters.
Well, you've got to have internal oversight of that as well, though. Somebody's writing the minutes. So, thank you.
We'll find out.
No aspersions to the attorney. We're outnumbered in here, I think. We've got to add some humor. Keep going, or any questions at this point?
I have one final issue that was in this report. It was a finding from 2020. The board did not deposit checks in a timely manner. This came forward. We reviewed 358 checks, and 136 of those, or 38%, were deposited 6 to 19 business days after they were received. And that's just an internal control thing. You need to put the money in the bank a little more timely is why we're saying that.
Especially in the days of electronic deposits. You don't actually have to go to the bank anymore.
Right. Yes. I didn't go through in detail the emergency contract significant issue, but you guys talked about a lot. Do y'all want me to go through it? Yes? Okay. So this is significant issue number 2. And it's the board entered into multiple emergency contracts following the sudden resignation of the board's prior executive director in August of 2020 and the board's subsequent decision to move their offices to Montgomery in September of 2020. And the board is still currently under an emergency contract. The board entered into 2 emergency contracts right after this happened. One was for an executive director, Dr. Keith Cates, and he served, and then he was an employee of the board. He only had an emergency contract for a couple months. The emergency was estimated to last 60 days, and it fell that way. The next was an emergency contract for an academic reviewer. This is a thing that is required by statute for them to have. There was just one emergency contract for this, and then she's been contracted after that under non-emergency contracts. The next paragraphs just go through each of the emergency contracts, beginning with Smith Warren Management as they progressed forward. The first contract we have a beginning as October 1, 2020. That is the date it is posted by finance. That's the date that we use of when it is happening. That contract was for $12,500 a month. The next contract was entered into in November. It was for 2 months for $15,000 a month for the months of October and November of 2021. The third emergency contract had a cost of $23,500 per month plus costs beginning in December of 2021, and that went through September 30th of 2022. This was the increase of $8,500 per month. And then the final emergency contract that they are operating under currently started on October 1st, 2022, and it runs through September 30th, 2023 at a cost of $23,500 per month.
Any questions of the members? All right, thank you so much. I'm now turning over the gavel. Oh, excuse me. Yes, sir.
Madam President, you said earlier anyway, there was a time, and again, I'm a novice at going through this, but there's a time when we talk about the review process and doing that for a year, 2 years, or 3 years. When does that happen? Does that happen today? Does that happen in the next meeting? When does that happen? Next meeting? Is that what you said? Okay.
Thursday.
I just wanted to clarify.
I think traditionally, what we've done in the short period of time that I've been here is to have these types of meetings. We'll set the agenda for public comment and review on Thursday. We'll have one same format next month for a different group, and then the following month, and then after we've completed all 3 monthly sessions of that, that's when we'll have a time to vote on whether or not what those extensions should be. Is that traditionally the way that's been done, Ms. Riddle? Thank you.
In your experience, you've seen it done both ways, either the day after the official meeting or in the end? Well, that'll be up to the pleasure of the chair, how he wants to do it this year.
Let's do that. I think that gives us a little bit more time to contemplate and read and look and talk about what we think, those changes and what the report, and then some of the findings that come in, some of the additional information that may trickle in, letters and stuff that's been asked for, that gives us a little bit more time to take a look at that. All right. Next committee is the is the Board of Electrical Contractors. You want to go ahead and give us a report or a summation? I don't know how we've been doing it before I got here, but let's do it the same way.
Yes, sir. The Board of Electrical Contractors was established by Act 1985-921. This board, 30th, 2023, is $420,000. This is $35,000 per month. There are a requirement for unused funds with this board. Any unspent or unencumbered funds at the end of the fiscal year in excess of $100,000 must be transferred into the state general fund on or before January 15th of the succeeding year. This board issues 3 types of licenses. They have a total of 5,103 active licensees as of December of 2020. They have 98% of their renewals performed online. Their financials are located on page 14. In fiscal year 2022, they had revenues or receipts of $825,880 and disbursements of $911,596.
I'm sorry.
Representative Simpson.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I think I have this wrong, but I'm just checking. You said their receipts for 2022 are what?
$825,880.
What would be the professional services contract for 2022?
The amount paid for professional, the 2022 contract amount, don't let me mistake.
Not for, I believe, for Smith Warren Services.
For $420,000 was paid in 2022.
Half of the receipts go to professional services? Okay. Okay.
While we're on that, what'd you say the disbursements were? 911?
$911,596.
Thank you.
Ms. Thomas? Unless there are any other questions along those lines right now.
The significant issues for this board are on page 7. The first significant issue, the only current one, is 13 of the 23 licensees that responded to our survey, or 57%, indicated that the most significant issue currently facing their profession in Alabama is the shortage of skilled labor or qualified electrical contractors performing electrical work. The next issue, I do need to let you guys know, there was a change. I found an error in my report. I apologize. From what I emailed you, the current report you have in front of you is correct, but there is a change from what I sent you out a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And that is in the second line under current status, that $8,000 number. It says $15,488.04. The ones that you were emailed said $8,000. So this issue has to do with reporting encumbrances and accounts payable at the end of the fiscal year to the comptroller's office. This was an issue in 2020 in the legal compliance examination, and so we followed up. The board encumbered $24,161 at the end of fiscal year 21. They expended $15,488.04 in the next fiscal year. That's a difference of $8,673. The board encumbered $63,357 at the end of fiscal year 22 and expended $41,585.40. That's a difference of $21,772. Additionally, at the end of fiscal year 2021, the board's unreserved cash balance was $253,000, yet the board transferred $177,765.54 to the state general fund, which was more than they were statutorily required to do because they're only supposed to do the amount over $100,000. Further, at the end of fiscal year 22, the board's unreserved cash balance was $128,691. However, the board transferred $9,419.32 to the state's general fund, which does not meet the amount statutorily required.
Let me ask you something, and I heard you call out those numbers, but they overpaid one cycle?
One, and then they underpaid the next time, and the differences don't match
They
up.
didn't, okay.
It didn't appear to offset that way.
Okay, that was
check
my
that.
question, yeah.
Yes. Okay. On page 8, if you turn over, there was a prior finding in the legal compliance examination from 2020. The board adopted an administrative rule to issue and charge a $75 fee for a provisional license that is not authorized by statute. The board continues to issue and charge fees for a provisional license. The board has initiated legislation to correct this several times without success, so the board is charging a fee for a provisional license, and there's nothing in the statute that allows for it.
Representative Stinson.
So wait a second. There was a prior finding in 2020 of the Sunset Committee, or of your examination, that said statutorily you are not authorized to collect these fees. I understand they may have presented legislation to try to change that. However, are you telling us that in the 2022, they are still current status, they are still collecting these fees?
Yes.
We're gonna need somebody to come and answer on that specifically tomorrow. Or Mr. Warren, are you the director of that? Could you come add to this conversation? Do you mind?
No.
So a provisional license was added in 2010 when the statute was changed, and as you can see in my response, the number of years we have presented legislation to correct this. However, this provisional license does keep people working in the areas. Now, we can stop, but, I mean, it's a license that's been created. Senator Coleman Madison and I had this conversation last year, and she remembered why, and we do continue to, but we've got to issue the license. We can stop issuing the license and they wouldn't have, and we'd be putting people out of work. So we're trying to keep people working on that license.
How much money do you make from that license?
Just $75.
How much money do you make total? How many people are paying that license?
565 people.
Hold on just a second. I just want to do this real quick.
Sure.
565 people are paying $75. So that's 42,375. Okay, so we're going to put people out of work so you can continue to make $420,000 a year, knowing that the statute does not apply, does not give you that authority, and continuing to do so even though legislation has failed.
Whoop! Mr. Chairman, can I be recognized?
Yes, ma'am.
So what would they do if the license was not being authorized? Who would do that work?
They would have to go and hire a licensed electrical contractor who is a statewide contractor that has the authority to work all over the state. A provisional is just an individual that is limited to the area that they were licensed previously to the law changing in 2010.
Are there ways for the counties to issue those?
Yes.
We could go back and
Yes.
make that change statutorily, but I mean, it's going to require a statutory change.
No,
I'm
it's
just
not.
asking questions. I don't
Right,
have
yes.
any recommendation for what we need to do. I'm just trying to flesh out.
But not all counties issue a license for electrical. Not all
Only
counties have
Birmingham.
electrical,
Only
licensing divisions.
Birmingham. Sorry.
Senator Kelly?
Okay, so you're gonna have to help me here, but.
Yes, sir.
So, we have a known law that has been ruled that this is in violation of that law. And the continued actions from the time that has been aware is that it is knowingly and willfully violated that law ever since and continues to this day. So you have a board that this body is responsible for, and their leadership or advisory or consultant, management fee, whatever, everyone knowingly violating that law, even though there have been attempts to try to rectify that unsuccessfully. So we have a knowingly organization
Yep.
that is violating this law willfully. Is
Yep.
that a correct statement?
Yes.
Unfortunately, that is correct. Yes, sir.
And who ultimately is responsible for making that decision to violate that law?
Keith Warren.
The board and myself taking directions from the board.
I'm not an attorney, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But it seems like that there is a type of fiduciary duty somewhere here being violated. And so the board's responsibility is to make sure that's not been done. Yours is the management of that responsibility, and basically neither one cares.
Say we didn't care, we've just
Made the decision to actively violate it. Okay.